Hey guys, thanks for joining me. This is Angie at ChicnScratch, and today I'm sharing with you how to make a fabric basket using 2 fat quarters. These 2 fat quarters will make 2 fabric baskets using the measurements I'm giving you today. A fat quarter measures 22 inches by 18 inches, but if you find your fat quarter is shy of 18 inches, you can use 17 inches instead. Just make sure that all 3 layers measure the same once you cut it: the outside fabric, the lining fabric, and the fusible fleece. So here's what you'll need: 2 fat quarters that coordinate, some fusible fleece, matching thread, and your basic sewing supplies that include a sewing machine, scissors, and an iron. So let's get started. Step 1, you're going to press your fat quarters. Step 2, you're going to cut your fat quarters to measure 10 by 18 inches, and I have a diagram of that on my website. Step 3, you're going to cut the fusible fleece to measure 10 by 18 inches. Step 4, we're going to head over to the ironing station. Okay, so this is the actual basket that we're making. Here are our layers. So I have my ChicnScratch label that I'm going to add. I've got my front fabric, and then my lining fabric, and my fusible fleece. So what we're going to do now is iron on the fusible fleece to our lining fabric, okay? Okay, so now what you need to do is, if you have any of the fusible fleece that's hanging over, make sure you trim those off, okay? You don't want to get that on the iron, and you don't want to get on your ironing board. So I want to make sure I tell you about that. Okay, so now this is done. So I'm going to show you the next step. I'm going to slide this out of the way, give that a chance to cool down. This is my front of the basket fabric, okay? So what I want to do is add my label, my ChicnScratch label. If you don't have a label, you can totally skip this step. Okay, so I'm going to take one pin, set it aside for a second. I'm going to fold my label in half, and I am going to attach it so that it gets sewn into my front fabric, okay? Okay, so there's that. Now what we're going to do is take this, make the ends meet. Okay, so now I'm going to take some of these clips, and I'm going to clip 3 in 3 places. So 3 on the left and 3 on the right. Now I'm going to do the same thing to this. Now I need to trim that fusible fleece. So I'm going to do this, but then I'm going to take this upstairs and trim off that fusible fleece. But I want you to see the steps. So you're just going to pin or clip, whatever you prefer, on each side. And then we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch down this right to the bottom here, and on the left to the bottom. So this is the closed end. Hopefully you can see that. So on both pieces, okay? Okay, so I have my walking foot on here, and like I said, I'm going to sew down the right side and the left side. So I'm going to start here. Okay, so the next step is you want to make sure that your label got added in your seam, and it did. And I have switched pieces for just a second because I did the next step and then my camera wasn't recording. So I'm going to show you on this one and then we'll go back to this one, okay? So what we've done is stitched down the left side and the right side on both of these pieces. We've got our opening at the top. So now what we want to do is make the bottom of our basket, and we want a 1.5 inch bottom. So I'm going to take my grid here and I'm going to use my marking pen, and I'm just going to trace around that. So that's 1.5 inches. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here on this side. And we're going to do the same thing on the liner. Well, I'm making sure that the top of my bag is at the top. And then over here on this side. Okay, now we're going to take our scissors and we're just going to cut that square out. And I meant to grab my fabric scissors, but of course they're up there by my sewing machine. Okay, now this one. And you can use a rotary cutter to do this also. Now we're going to do the same thing to this one. This one's a lot easier because it doesn't have that fusible fleece. You will also probably have a straighter cut if you use your rotary cutter, but I'm okay with it not being perfectly straight. No one's going to see the inside of this bag. Okay, so now we can go back to our original one that we're making. So we've got the holes in the bottom, and what we want to do is bring that together, open the seam if you can, and then we're going to pin, because we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch straight across here, okay? This creates the bottom of our basket. So we're going to do the same thing to this one. Open that seam. If you can't open the seam, that's okay. Just sew it to one side. These bags or baskets are pretty forgiving. As you can see, that's not the straightest cut I've ever made. So I'm going to do the same thing for the front of the basket fabric. So bring that together, open the seam. I should have done a better job of cutting that one. It's okay, I'll just sew like a 1/2 inch seam instead of a 1/4. Actually on this bag, I do use more of a 1/2 inch seam and not a 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch just is too small for these baskets. Okay, so now we're going to go to the sewing machine. And we're going to stitch straight across, okay? Okay, so the next step is the most important, and it is also the most confusing. So remember, you're going to leave your outside fabric, that's the flowers, leave the outside fabric on the inside, okay? You want to place your fabric right sides together. So we're going to take the liner and we're going to flip this right side out, okay? Now we're going to place this inside of the fabric. So again, this is the right sides are facing each other, okay? And then I'm going to pin. Actually, I'm going to clip. I've become a real fan of these clips. And I'm going to go all the way around, except I want to come over here and match this seam up first. So do your 2 seams. One can go in one direction, the other can go in the other. And then I'm going to leave about a 2.5 inch gap so that I can turn the bag inside out, okay? So I'm going to continue pinning over here, but not that other side. Okay, so it's all clipped and we are ready to go sew. Okay, so we've just stitched around the top of the bag. Now what we're going to do is flip the bag right side out. If the opening that you leave is too small, then just remember the next time to leave a larger opening. 2.5 inches is usually pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to get my hand back in there and make sure that I have my points on the bottom of the bag. Okay, there we go. So now this is the outside, this is the lining. So what I'm going to do is put the inside, the lining inside, and this is a reversible basket, so you can do it however you want. But remember that I put my tag, my ChicnScratch label on the outside, so that would not be on the reverse side unless I added a second one. Okay, so here's our basket. Now we still have to take this over to the sewing machine and close that 2.5 inch gap. The reason I have a larger seam allowance too is because sometimes it's really hard to get a 1/4 inch seam with a walking foot. So I sew with a larger seam allowance on these baskets or bags, whatever you want to call them, because I found it's easier to sew along the top there. So I'm going to actually pin this because I want to keep sometimes you'll notice that the fabric kind of wants to follow each other. So like I don't want the outside fabric going inside, and you can really see it over here. So I'm going to pin it again, or clip it, I should say. You know, I've stopped using pins as much because I swear every time I touch a pin, I poke myself. I end up bleeding on every project that I make. So I'm like, okay, I really like these clips. Okay, now we really need to use it right here. So you want to make sure that you fold that over, and if you have one of those little small irons, you could use that. Put this on your little mini ironing board and iron it. That would make it a lot easier. These clips hold pretty well, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm trying to get that thread to go inside there. Okay, so we're going back to the sewing machine. Okay, so we just stitched all along the top, and we want to make sure that we got that seam, that it's not loose in there, that it's not going to open up, and I did get it. And then now we want to trim all those extra threads. Okay, and the final step is we're just going to roll this down. And then that will help us find any additional threads that might be sticking out. Okay, so what do you think? Pretty cute, right? Okay, and you can fold this down further if you want. That would cover up the label. You can make the bottom of this thing wider if you cut. This is a 1.5 inch, but if you wanted it wider, then you could cut it at 2 inches. So I'm going to show you a couple of the other sizes and just kind of explain the process. So this is the one that we just made, which is supposed to be identical to this one, but they all turn out to be just a few inches different. I think this actually might be the same. Okay, so there's that one. That's my favorite size. Then we have this little mini one, and it's mini, yeah. And then we have another mini. And I'll tell you what happened is I messed up cutting my fabric on these, and instead of throwing the fabric away, I decided to just keep making them because it's the same concept. On this one, I think I only cut a 1/2 inch or maybe 1 inch to get the bottom. Yeah. So this one looks like it may be wider, and then here's another one. So you can use any size following the same principle. And this is the larger one that I made. You can only get one of these out of a fat quarter, whereas you can get 2 of these out of fat quarter, or you can get one of these and one of these. Again, this was 10 by 18. And I don't know the rest of these because, like I said, they were mess ups, but they're so cute. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know, and I hope you've enjoyed my video today. Thanks a lot. Bye.